Welcome to week 2 of 5-2 parenting, and we're going to continue our focus on how to help your kids know that they're loved and feel loved and secured in life. Last week we talked about finding an area where they already are having life, and you going in and serving it and communicating love there. This week we're going to talk about the other side, a place where they don't necessarily want to go and where it's not emotionally positive, but we need to make sure that they're corrected properly.
Yeah, so this issue of correction and consistent correction is really what we want to talk about today, because that's the area where your child is going to really feel the most loved and secure is when you have consistent correction.
Yeah, the Bible tells us in Proverbs 23:13, do not withhold correction from your child. And we live in this culture now that says the best way to love your child is always say yes to them. Matter of fact, there's some movements out there where it's like, don't tell your kid no. Well, I'm pretty sure God's going to tell your kid no, and the world's going to tell your kid no. So I think it's a good idea to get them used to hearing the word no in a positive, loving environment. And the irony is when we are not consistent, and if our kids nag us enough, we always change our rules, we actually create unhappy kids. Mm-hmm. And we create kids who get very insecure. The more you can be consistent, the more secure and loved they are, and the more you're going to strengthen their character and the emotional muscles to handle the no's of life that are necessary.
Yeah, so one example that we were talking about was just the issue of bedtime. That is a difficult one in many households, and really it's an issue of your child keeps getting up and so many different things going on there, and you're just exhausted, you're done, you just want them in that room and you'll do whatever it takes to get them there, right?
Yeah, it's Jim Gaffigan who says that your kid's bedtime is like a reverse hostage situation. I'll give you whatever you want, just stay in the room.
Yes, just stay there. I'll do whatever you
Bad
want.
advice.
Yeah, so, really, you do want them to stay in the room, but it doesn't have to look like that.
No, that's not a good idea.
And so...
Because it's only going to get worse.
Yeah, and so what you want to do, really, where it all begins, is the routine, that consistent routine. And yes, there will be nights that it's just not going to work out with the family schedule. But as much as you can, you want to have that consistent routine. So when I'll use our family as an example, when our children were young, we would have dinner time, clean up from dinner, and then pretty much right away start on the bedtime routine, which was pretty early for us because they went to bed at 7:30.
Hallelujah.
And so it was, off to bath and get your bath and get ready for bed. We'd read stories, we'd pray, and then once they went to bed, that was the expectation, that they would be in bed and that they would stay there unless there was some kind of huge, a real emergency.
Right.
Yeah.
So consistency is not the same thing as permanency. It doesn't have to always be. It's just consistent overall.
Yeah.
And the best way to give your kids the chance to be healthy and grow at a healthy rate is give them consistency. They need rules, but those rules should have relationship and it should have routine to it. So it's just not random. We want to model a relationship with our kids that they're going to have with God. Now, we're not saying we're God. We're just saying we are God's authority in their life, though. And God has relationship with us in two ways. Here are the two rules in relationship with God. Number one, He loves us more than anybody else and has sacrificed more for us than anybody else. And number two, He's absolutely in charge. And those are the two rules with God. He loves you more than anybody else, and He's in charge. And that's what's going to produce the healthiest versions of us. We want to do the same thing for our kids. We want to help them have routine that has good relationship in it. And so it doesn't rush through bedtime. It makes time to love them and fill up their hearts and laugh with them. But then it's time to go to bed. And whether, dinner time is another big one where I don't want this, I want that. We do it this way. It's like build some consistency. And if they get hungry, they'll eat. It's just going to happen after a while. So you might have to endure a little bit. This is so important. You were saying that the earlier you do this, the better.
Yeah, looking back, I see how gosh, there were a lot of hard days of, being consistent. That can be really difficult to do that when they're young. But take heart, because the more you do that when you are consistent, as they get older, you really don't have a huge job to do them, because they've learned this is this is what's expected. And so you really don't have as many disciplinary issues as they're getting older then.
I can't say strongly enough how important this is. If you don't teach your kids to deny themselves, and Jesus in Luke 9:23 said we have to learn to deny ourselves, you're setting your kid up for character issues.
Yeah.
You just set them up for problems they don't need. And so here are 3 steps to consistent correction. Number 1, you want a consistent rule. Number 2, you want to give them a moment of relationship when they're not following the rule. So you want to hear from them, because maybe there's something important that they've got to say, like the house is on fire. And, it's a good time not to be consistent with going to bed. And then once you've had the relationship moment, explain to them as best you can why it's important that they do that. You need to come to resolution. You need to apply a consequence, or they're doing it. And we'll talk another video about consequence, but it should cost them more than it's costing you. That's a secret to doing it well. So those 3 steps: rule, relationship, and then resolution, very important.
Yeah, so our challenge of the week is to find one area where you just find yourself repeating your words with your children, and instead of following through on a certain area of discipline that you keep repeating yourself, that's probably an area that needs to improve. And so we want to challenge you to find out what that is, and maybe just improve on that a little bit.
Yeah, and give your kids a heads up that it's about to become consistent, because obviously they need that to know we're going to start being consistent about this rule. Here's why. It's important for people to get rest, or for us, sometimes family, it's not what's best for everybody. It's best what makes the family work. So it might not be best for you, but it's best for the family right now. We're going to do it this way. So give them a heads up. Go for it. We're going to have follow-up questions. I'm sure there will be a number of them. You can email us at 52parenting@gmail.com, and go make it a great week. Be a great parent, and happy birthday.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Bye.